how do we begin to cultivate what would be vicarious hope and vicarious resilience? That work starts with us. Quick note before we dive in. If you're a woman in healthcare leadership, and especially if you're a woman physician or clinician leader looking for a space that truly gets the challenges that we experience as women leaders in medicine, check out our Remap cohort. It's 4 months, real community, real skills, and 22 CME credits. Link is in the show notes. Welcome back to another episode. I am your host and so grateful as always to be with you. Now, I've been wondering lately, as a community, as families, as individuals, how we maintain or cultivate even, or propagate even, hope in these times. If you follow the podcast earlier, a few episodes ago, I talked about grief and growth being two sides of the same coin. And so this wondering has expanded into, if we're thinking about growth and we're thinking about the path forward with all of the chaos and the trauma that's going on, that's being like inundating our feeds, what is the path forward and how do we begin to cultivate something different? How do we create the path to vicarious hope, resilience as an access to transformation? I've thought about what is the mechanism. I'm all about the brain and I like to geek out as it pertains to what that is. And I'll talk about that and I'll talk about what that means for us. So one of the reasons that vicarious trauma happens is because of what we have these things in our brains called neurons, which are in this area of the brain, the limbic system. And the limbic system is the part of our brain that is responsible for human emotions and memory. It's that part of the system that contains the amygdala, which is our detects threat, and our hippocampus, which is the seat of our memory, and the hypothalamus, which is our emotional processing center. And so the mirror neurons, they are very specialized brain cells that activate when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing an action. And it helps us to basically process and understand and empathize with others, all right? And so the mirror neurons are actually found in the premotor cortex. It's found in a different part of the brain. But what's important about mirror neurons is that when we see someone with a particular emotion, our brain has these specialized cells has the tendency and the capacity to mirror that emotion, to mirror that action even, right? And so if we take the case that we have these mirror neurons and we have this limbic system, one of the things that happens often is something called limbic resonance. And what that is, limbic resonance, is our capacity to connect with another emotionally through these mirror neurons. And we've heard of emotional regulation. I talked about it quite a bit in previous episodes when we talk about emotional intelligence. Our emotional regulation is our capacity to experience an emotion and sort of press the pause button or the slow down button so that we can respond in a way that's workable or appropriate to the situation that we're in, right? And so we can emotionally regulate ourselves, but we also have the capacity for co-regulation. And that is when between two people, one is mirroring the other in the emotional regulation process. So it's like when you have babies who are extremely sensitive to energy, to people's energy, when a baby is held by someone who's feeling calm, whose energy is welcoming and warming, then that baby will calm down. And I don't know if you've ever walked into the room or ever been around a person with whom, when you're with them, you're like, man, Every time I'm with you, I just get this sense of calm. Or you have been around a person, conversely, with, man, every time I'm around this person, I feel anxious, or I feel a sense of unsettledness. Or even if you're around a person and every time you're around this person, that person gets you hype, right? There is a level of connection, limbic resonance that happens there that allows for co regulation. So, why am I talking about this? Why does this even matter? Because one of the reasons that vicarious trauma happens is because if we're inundated with all of these violent events, with all of the chaos, with all of the trauma that's happening in the world, then that is impacting our nervous system. And as we move in our circles of influence, our workplaces, our family circles, that we are in effect impacting the people around us. And your kids come home and you're still like vibrating on 10 from something that's happened at work, your kid is going to sense that because your kid has mirror neurons, your spouse may sense it. Now, if your spouse has the capacity to co regulate, maybe there's something that your spouse does or way of being that they are that helps you to calm down. Or there are actions that they take, like an embrace or a hug or a joke or laughter, some type of pattern interrupt that sort of regulates your nervous system so that that co regulation can happen. So, what's important to recognize is that when we ourselves are able to build our capacity for regulation, build our own resilience, that hope can be propagated, can be spread and rippled out via this process of our limbic system, our process of co regulation, our process of mirror neurons. Hey, before we get back to the episode, I want to take a moment to share something close to my heart. 17 years ago, someone saw my leadership before I could see it myself. That experience changed everything for me. And that's exactly why I created the REMAP cohort. If you're a woman physician or leader in healthcare who's tired of being talked over, burned out from carrying conversations you don't have language for, or just craving a space where you don't have to explain being the only one in the room, this is for you. REMAP is a 4-month cohort, a small, intimate community for women, physicians, and leaders in healthcare, where you'll build real communication skills and community, navigate the hard stuff, and yes, earn CME credit in the process. 22 Category 1 AMA CME to be exact. Listen, you deserve a space that pours into you, not one that continues to extract from you. Find out more, reserve your spot, or schedule a discovery call at mindremappingacademy.com. Also, the link is in the show notes. I can give you a great example. I went to a conference recently, and inside of this conference, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of acknowledging what's so in the world of injustice and inequities. There's a lot of acknowledging of that and grief, quite frankly, of that. However, there's also a lot of acknowledgement of what's possible, focusing our brain on the work that's being done, on the shoulders on which we stand, on how there have been successes before, on how our ancestors have moved through things. And it generated a lot of hope in the room. And of course, when we have this conversation in community, that our limbic systems are all mirroring each other and we can all experience that hope together, right? And so that is the power of this sort of limbic resonance. In effect, that emotion motivates us to do the work to move towards what is possible, what we say is possible, to create the structures, to create the systems, to create the communications, the behaviors consistent with that. And when we do that, individually and we begin to do it on teams, in families, in communities, in organizations, then what we create is a vicarious hope, right? And a vicarious resilience. And that's why it's so important for organizations to, number one, allow for talk about emotion in the workplace and to cultivate psychological safety, to cultivate trust, especially psychological safety to challenge, because that allows us to challenge what might be a negative thought pathway or a stuck thought pathway, redirecting into a pathway of possibility and of hope. All right. And so this is the challenge, right? How do we begin to cultivate what would be vicarious hope and vicarious resilience? That work starts with us. It starts inside of our homes, it starts inside of our teams, it starts even just one to the other. And that takes a lot of work and personal acknowledgement of where we are, maybe in a thought cycle of doom and gloom, right? It takes cultivating our behaviors. Where are our behavior patterns in a cycle of an unworkable cycle, right? So we have to be mindful. We have to be mindful of our own processes so that we can begin to shift. And we also have to be mindful of who we're surrounding ourselves with, because we can seek out the people who actually keep us accountable, who actually fuel us with possibility. I definitely have those people in my life as well. When my thoughts start to spiral and I start to ruminate on things that do not serve what I say I'm up to, I have people to redirect. So who are those people in your life? Who are those communities? And how can you be the source of bringing that limbic resonance, that vicarious hope, and that vicarious resilience? Because that, my friends, is the way that we are going to get through all that we are dealing with. Okay. And so, with that, I offer you to share this with someone who you know this would benefit, with a friend, with a colleague, with a family, with a community. And let's go deal some hope. And this is not to bypass, this is not to ignore, this is to resist, resist through hope, resist through self care, resist through possibility, right? Resist, resist. So if you're in the conversation of resistance and of hope dealing, this is what we need to be. This is one of the actions we begin to take. All right. So share this with a friend, a family, a colleague. If you haven't subscribed, if this is your first time listening, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, because we have these conversations all the time, both in solo episodes and with my amazing guests. And I would appreciate if you went and left a 5-star review, because that helps the algorithm to serve us up even more to the people who need us most. And finally, stay tuned, because TEDx Talk is coming out soon, and maybe by the time this episode releases, it'll be out. So look for the new TEDx Talk that's coming out, which is why your I'm sorries are not healing, moving from apology to repair. And stay tuned for a lot of events that are going to be coming up surrounding this, some virtual conversations and inquiries that I'm going to be holding starting at the end of May. So looking forward to seeing you there. And until the next time I see you, stay empowered.